Ready? Good afternoon. Welcome. This is Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, December 18th, 2018. We do have Councilman Paul Draper on the phone.
Hey, Paul.
Councilman Draper, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Welcome. Okay, first on the agenda to be discussed is a presentation from Mr. Glue with Medco. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have copies of my presentation slides in case anybody wants to take notes. So as we round out another year, wanted to take an opportunity to reflect a little bit on some of the work that we've accomplished, not just this past year, but over the last several years. And I guess really kind of set the stage for where do we go from here. We'll kind of end with a little perspective and maybe, again, more of a stage set for a more formal proposal that we will be working on in 2019 regarding our continued partnership with the City of Marion. So for some of you, well, maybe one of you, we haven't had this presentation. So I wanted to just start by just a general orientation as far as who we are as an organization. So we're a small team. If you're in the building and see these faces, it's just myself. Emily Russ is actually in the back of the room, and then our part-time admin, Michelle Klein. Again, just want you to be able to connect faces as you're in the building. From a governance standpoint, we are led by a 27 member board of directors. You can see broken out there. Our executive team at the bottom. We're getting ready to rotate our leadership team. So Sherry Monahan with Central Iowa Power will take over as chair. So technically my direct boss at the beginning of the year. And then we're in the process of identifying our new incoming chair, which would be 2 years later from members of our board. Permanent voting positions on our board are represented as you see here. If you'll recall from our annual lunch earlier in the year, one of the changes that we made to our bylaws was designating our city manager as a permanent voting member on our board of directors. And then we have a multitude of ex officio members who sit on our board as well, including the mayor who attends our meetings. It was just a couple of months ago. One of the great things that I love about our board is their just great leadership when it comes to strategy. And so just a few months ago, we convened a core group of our board. You might recognize some faces in there, business leaders, our superintendents, just a great team to just refresh and make sure that the areas that we're leading continue to match with the needs of our investors and the needs of our community as we lead economic development in this community. So coming out of that, our strategic plan is very simple. We call it our playbook. And one of the first questions that we look at and that our board kind of played with a little bit was this. It's our reason for existence. Some companies call it their mission statement. And for us, the outcome and tweak was we exist to really be economic development thought leaders who drive competitive advantage for Marion. We want this statement to recognize that what we do is we feel very strongly that we don't just want to lead and influence what we do, but we want to help really set direction for many partners that really support this economic development space for our community. But at the end of the day, we exist specifically for Marion. We're not an economic development group really focused on necessarily the state or the region. I mean, our focus at the end of the day is growing our Marion community. The next question that we answer is how do we behave? So again, this is a lot of just the dynamics and characteristics as far as how we act as an organization by being leaders, by being the example, trustworthy, and being all in, Marion first. So we talk about these a lot longer than we reflect on these, but they really set the tone, really, for how we act as an organization and how our board leads on a monthly basis. So what we came up with are these 5 bullet points that are really intended to focus on the next 12 months. So some of these things we're setting the stage to come back to. I think with any organization, it's important that we remain focused on our key strategy and know when to say no, right? That sounds like maybe a little bit of an elementary statement, but is very important, especially in a growing community like Marion, that we don't bite off more than we can chew with the resources we have and the staff that we have. This next year, so our organization goes through an investment drive. In the past, we've called it a capital campaign about every 5 years. 2019 is that year where we we get to do that again, preparing for dollars beginning in 2020. So in the next 12 months, our focus is really on that particular financial base. Community Promise has been an extremely successful program for us so far, but our goal is to really continue to make it a household name within our community. So we have some specific goals relative to that, some of which we've already exceeded before we hit the year. Aligning new talent to support the vision. And some of the things that we talk about here as far as the different roles that we play in our community, we believe there's an opportunity for us to really kind of take a look at our staffing levels and how we can be most effective as we move forward, continuing to support economic development in our community. And the last is kind of you had a little bit of a taste of it about a month ago when we were in here talking about the fiber initiative that we're seeking to develop and grow. There's a lot of very focused strategies. We invested in a plan a couple of years ago that's really about driving that statement. And so moving forward, the recommendations of that plan is really kind of a heavy lift for us that are encompassed in that statement. So we want to remain focused on really our key areas of business development, real estate development, workforce development. I put these up only to show that we are very intentional to make sure that as we work even with our partners, our neighbors that we live with at the Chamber of Commerce, that again, we make sure that we're focused on our key areas that we influence. So this is just a brochure from 2014, the last time we set our goals and sought to raise money to fund our organization. And what I wanted to do is kind of bring you forward now on some things that have happened since then. So we have a couple of different programs or maybe different brands of our organization that exist. About a year and a half ago, we launched a co-working space. Really, the intent was to seek to uncover kind of that entrepreneurial ecosystem within our community and be a tool to help grow small businesses within our community. Then earlier this year, as we said, we can maybe find these folks that want co-working, but we can't find those small businesses, those next businesses that we know that exist, but maybe aren't investors in Medco, they aren't members of any particular organization, but they need a network. And so Startup Exchange is really our platform for small business that maybe can't afford to be part of an organization but just need a network. And so it's a new platform that we are just growing here in the latter half of 2018. And then Community Promise is, obviously you are familiar with that, but I wanted to just dive into it for a second. This is a survey that we just put out to our investors last Monday or Tuesday. We do it every year at the end of the year. We ask lots of questions, but we always ask this one regarding what is your biggest challenge for business. I did not filter or sort these in any way. This is just of the first few results that are out there. I went to our results, copied and pasted. So you can see in the ones that I bolded, it has to do with talent, right? So we know that well over probably 60% of respondents will say their biggest challenge by far is talent. So to us, that continues to reaffirm that our strategy and game plan with Community Promise is the right one if we're aligning what we do with the greatest needs of our existing business community. So hopefully we encourage you to explore our website. We've been really focused on growing this program, again, building it into a brand name in our community over the past 12 months. It will continue to be our focus moving forward. If you attended our annual lunch, you know that our focus was educating our partners about what this is, bringing our youth alongside our business partners. If you're in our library, our career engagement booth was set up out in the library for a couple of months this summer. We've taken it to different career-related events in our community as we introduce students to real careers that exist here. I mean, in a nutshell, this program is about educating our youth that all of those companies that you drive by hundreds of times as you grow up here, there are really exciting career opportunities that exist here. We might not have companies that are household names that we're all familiar with, but we want you to know before you decide that you need to go elsewhere to be successful that there are great opportunities here. That's really, in a nutshell, what Community Promise is about. We've done professional development days with our educators in both of our school districts. We host after-school career explorer clubs with all of our middle schools in both Linn-Mar and Marion. We're really excited about the momentum that we've built there. And one of our biggest wins, as recent as this fall, is we now have an opportunity to be in the classroom of every 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student in both school districts, introducing them to the tools that we have through Community Promise. So we feel like we're really starting to make some headway in gaining traction through this program. So that's something new. That's something that didn't exist in 2015, but is something, again, that is 100% aligned with the needs of our business community. We know that in the development space, it's been an exciting few years in our community. One thing that's new for us that didn't really exist 4 or 5 years ago is the Marion Enterprise Center and managing that tool and promoting that tool. It has been a great asset for us to have. We've been able to respond very quickly to projects that have been interested in looking at our community. The number of times that we've been able to respond to state inquiries for projects, we didn't used to be able to play in that space. We can compete now because of that asset that we've developed. I think we're most excited. Our recent project that looks a lot better than this picture that was taken about a month ago, speedy delivery. And we know that we have a lot more work to do in really selling the assets of this park. We have about 130 acres left. I think all of us would love to be wildly successful with this project and seek ways to do it again so we can continue to provide opportunities for larger companies looking to expand or grow in our community. So lots more work to do. When we talk about targeted marketing activities, a lot of it is really aligned with some of the unique assets that exist out here in this park. But there's a story to tell, and it takes work to tell that story and find the audiences to tell it to. This is a new tool that we've developed with the Iowa Economic Development Authority to market the Marion Enterprise Center. So as you hear about certified sites across the state, we are now one of about a dozen select sites the state intentionally markets as they're traveling the country and the world for new prospects. So we've developed some good relationships with IEDA. We can look not just over this past year, but over the last several years at projects that you have recently approved, projects that we know are under construction today, and we're very excited to see wrap up, come online. Great industrial expansion projects, timberline manufacturing, one that's underway, company that's growing like crazy, added over 80 employees just in this year alone in their current building. Great investments by companies like LimoLink, Ecolips, a big win to keep this company in the metro area. Really happy to have the building that they needed. Sidebar, if any of you are getting calls about parking challenges out there, there's a solution in the works. So I guess your response can be that solution will be taken care of in the next 30 to 60 days. I'll leave it at that. Great existing companies like Marion Process Solutions and the expansions that they finished. Great people. This is Kevin Hupp, Hupp Electric Motors. Great corporate citizen that we added to our company about 3 or 4 years ago with Hupp Electric moving over here. New companies like Quincy Recycle that you'll probably see some expansion happening out on this site in the next year or two. Have done a great job moving into this market. Companies that a lot of us didn't even know existed. Electric Specialty Manufacturing, a small little company that has lived just down the street from here for many, many years that was ready to go to the next level. The Marion Enterprise Center was really the solution for them. New companies to North America like Elplast. I could go on and on. Freund Vector continuing to grow. The biggest building that we have in this community now in legacy manufacturing. We have been very fortunate over the last several years to be able to support the amount of growth that we've experienced. And 2018 is ending as yet another strong year. So we anticipate that by the end of December, this is using data from our building department. It's measuring new starts of construction by commercial, industrial property, and then residential. We're already over $40 million of new commercial industrial investment in 2018. So when you add that to our trend, we love tracking these numbers. We need as a community to continue to see that upward trajectory because you look in years past, we were pretty flat. I think we would all agree we weren't necessarily intentional about how we continue to drive more commercial industrial development. I'm confident we're going to continue to see these upward trends. Again, 2018 is a great year again. This is our pipeline as far as we track statistics with our capital campaign. So these numbers go back to the beginning of 2015. Active prospects are prospects that, as of the end of last month, that we track as potential investment in our community. It's one thing to have this list. It's another thing to manage that list well. It becomes a struggle as just the amount of activities that we continue to support in our community. Inactive prospects, we define those as projects that we are aware of could possibly happen. We haven't removed them, but just not active today. So again, another good amount of capital investment that we can track. Projects are those currently underway. So you drive around the community, see projects under construction. They may be represented in this list. And let me say that this does not represent all capital investment going on in our community. It's projects that we've had a direct connection with or supported in some way as they've gotten in the ground. And then complete projects are one that we've influenced done with construction. So nearly $100 million of projects since 2015. That bottom number, it's a huge number, but we like to track projects that we look at that, frankly, they might not be a fit for our community, but we like to track where those leads come from. I can tell the story behind every single one of those projects as far as why they weren't a fit for Marion. But it's important for us to know that as we continue to provide opportunities for business in the future. I think this is a very important thing. So if you look at those projects that are complete, just the projects that are complete, well, you can see both. I've got projects complete and then under construction. What those projects on an annual basis mean or will mean for the city of Marion, for instance, if we have some TIF in play, is that eventually just these projects that are mentioned for the city, complete projects, $1.2 million, under construction, another $1.2 million. So about $2.5 million of new revenue for the general fund based on those projects, even slightly larger numbers for our school districts, and then you can see the county as well. So this is annual new revenue available for these taxing entities just based on the projects that we've influenced. Just to get an idea of some other things that we're involved in, just so that you're aware, we're a little unique. We're not like a pure membership-based organization in that a lot of the work we do is supporting companies that aren't necessarily financial contributors of ours. We don't support companies based on whether or not they're a financial partner. So, for instance, a lot of the work that we do in helping to, sometimes you see projects that come through requesting financial assistance, where we've brought that through the community's development committee. Most of the time, those aren't necessarily financial investors of ours, but that's an important role that we play in the community in helping those projects. Maybe someday they are, but that's not how we say yes or no and how we support growing businesses within our community. We talk about investor engagement as our business community grows. Year to date, I've met with 136 different businesses within our community. As we assess needs, sometimes we're meeting with them to literally help them with the project. More often than not, we're just assessing what their needs and challenges might be as we, again, continue to align strategy to support companies. I showed you the pipeline. Managing that growing pipeline it's a big lift, right, to do it well. It's easy to put a company in there and say, oh, look, our pipeline grew. It's another thing to say we really built a solid relationship with that company to make the reality of that investment as much of a reality as possible. Public policy is an area that hopefully some of these different public policy wins are familiar to you all. So a couple of years ago, we were heavily involved in lobbying for an increase in the road use tax. That's a big win for the city of Marion. The sales tax rebate that was recently announced that Prospect Meadows will receive, was it up to $2.5 million in sales tax rebates? So a couple of years ago, working with our legislators in Des Moines, we were able to get Governor Branstad to sign that bill. And we were involved in that to the very end with a private meeting with Governor Branstad to make sure he signed that bill. A few years later, that's a great win for our community that legislation was able to come through. So Jack and his team have done a great job making sure that they've followed through in the end of that. We know TIF is constantly under attack at the State House. It is a very important tool that I feel we responsibly use in this community. Almost in some ways, people know that you don't just come to Marion and you get a handout of public tax assistance. We heavily scrutinize those projects. I think you've seen some of that. But yet we have been involved from a statewide standpoint through our association, Professional Developers of Iowa, of really being a leader somewhat and making sure we're communicating in all corners of the state how to effectively use this tool. Tower Terrace Road, aviation dollars to the DOT, we've been at the forefront of ensuring that these tools and sources of funding are utilized appropriately. A couple more slides. So as we move forward, as we continue to evaluate what is the best way to do what we do, we look across the state at a lot of different models for how economic development is delivered. You can look as close as our neighbors in Cedar Rapids, who have really chose to kind of do a lot of that more in-house as a function exclusively of government. I think we are extremely fortunate to really do economic development the way that we do it here. We have an extremely close working relationship with many of the folks in this room. We feel that the public-private partnership model that we have in place is really the best way to do things. Our board stands firmly behind that. We hope that we've shown results and built relationships that you all would think the same, including staff in this room. Again, as we move forward here in the next few months, we're working to sharpen kind of our financial campaign, how we're supported, aligning staff with that. You know, when we sat in here and I heard a lot of conversation through the CIP, gosh, we need more dollars. We've got more and more projects. How do we do that? We push the gas pedal to the floor even harder on driving new economic development in our community. We want to help be a leader in making that happen. And when we talk about other partnerships that we want to make sure that are aligned with our strategy, we feel that we can kind of be that funnel to help do that. A couple months ago, Kurt Nelson was here talking about, gee, we'd love the city of Marion to support EDC, right? I think the recommendation was, how are you aligned with some of our partners? So we've had that meeting since. We've identified ways that we can maybe be very specific in expectations if some dollars were to be invested from this community. But we feel like when you look at a lot of these partnerships, that we are kind of the entry point or the main point of contact, serving on a lot of these different groups. In some ways, we already fund a couple of these organizations. So we want to make sure we're as efficient as possible in engaging with these partners, not duplicating, but coordinating how each of these different organizations and the different entities that they support can do that all as part of one team. And we're the people at the table with a lot of these organizations. Kind of the what do we do? We talked about the why do we exist, but this is another question that our board defined. We serve as the catalyst of economic development in Marion. We don't necessarily do everything, but from a strategy standpoint, we think we play a pretty important role in that. So this is literally the last slide. If we reflect back to 2014 and who we were as an organization back then, we were supported financially by about 122 companies. You can see how that's increased. Today, you can see how our budget has changed. One thing that I'm pretty proud of, because I think it's reflective of private business really buying in to what we do. And I am not standing here today. I don't think to be more than half funded by government is how an economic development organization should exist. So these statistics I'm pretty proud of, in that where we used to be over half funded by public sources of money, today that number drops to about 25%. So I think that speaks well about our business community investing in who we are. But at the same time, I think the seed that we want to plant is opportunity for us to partner in a new way, in an increased way, beginning in 2019. We're not here today to define what that is. We have had some initial conversations with the city manager about what that could look like. But we first just want you to understand really what we've accomplished in the last few years as we prepare to start defining with you what that looks like in the next 5 years. So that's my presentation for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
God, I talked that long, huh?
Do we have questions for Mr. Glue?
I don't have any questions, but I do have a couple of comments. I want to thank you, Nick, for all your work that you do, your board, the organization. I've had the luxury of being able to travel across the state a little bit and visit with, partners with like the Iowa League of Cities. I did attend a budget work session up in Waverly, Iowa. And the Economic Alliance is the big topic right now, it seems like. And so as I'm visiting with other cities, it was very interesting for me to witness and get to experience a lot of the chit-chat on the sidelines as to what's going on in Marion. So you're right. Thank you again for the opportunity to attend that Professional Developers of Iowa. That was very eye-opening for me. I will be as well attending the Legislative Day at the Capitol on February 19th. So there's a lot of good things to come, things that we need to push for and work for our city. So I look forward to visiting with you on those topics. But I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for another great year. I just can't imagine what next year is going to look like. Like the one comment was saying up there, was just keeping up. That was just one bullet point, keeping up. It's exciting times. So thank you.
Councilwoman Gadela has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. You had a slide about all the projects and then the lost projects, and then there was a number. Was there a common denominator of the lost projects, or were they
Sure.
all different?
So a lot of the bigger dollar projects, so we do not do very much external recruitment of business. We've done some work through some of the targeted strategy that we've developed where we're building towards some very targeted external marketing. But a lot of the big projects from outside of our region come through the new regional entity called ICR. So probably a common thread is we're starting to see leads, or we're becoming more aware of projects that are looking at our region, and they're bigger dollar projects, but they're very quickly not a fit for Marion because they're typically heavy utility users. So they're heavy water users. They need lots of sanitary sewer. We're just not built to support those types of companies. We could be built to really support the technology, leverage the fiber. So what I think a lot of the big numbers in there come from those types of projects.
And they would have been an impossible fit then.
Couldn't.
Right.
We would not be able to
Okay.
serve them.
I was just wondering if there was something.
A lot of times it's that, although we do have quite a few on the other end of things, not that these are high dollar, but there might be quantity of projects, is the smaller lots, smaller to mid-sized lots. So as we're starting to hear more about the Aircom Park, the concept of a industrial park on the east side of the airport with smaller sized lots, we lose a lot of opportunity because we do not have that inventory of lots available in our community. So there's some lists of those types of things, or existing buildings. I find a lot of companies that are looking for existing space, and we are just not a community of excess building inventory sitting available. So a lot of times it'll be notated as that's the reason that we lost it, is we just didn't have an existing building.
Okay. Thank you. And then the last thing is kudos getting the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in both schools, having that audience. That's huge to get to partner with both school districts. And I just think that that's such a cool connection that our economic development has, really connected with the future workforce, and it's obvious and it's present in a lot of what you do, and that's a really big feather in the cap. So
that's kudos to Emily and her leadership on Community Promise for really being persistent in those relationships. I'll tell you what, 3-4 years ago, the doors that we have opened literally into the classrooms of our community are doors that we probably couldn't have even budged a few years ago. So, we've had to be intentional in building those relationships with not just our administrators, but our school counselors and our teachers. And it's really cool to see it starting to play out.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Glue?
Yeah, I'll just add a comment again. I used to be the chairman of Medco back when it had a budget of about $30,000 or $40,000 a part-time person. So really, to sit here today and see where Medco is today and the strength that it adds to the city, just a gigantic building block, I believe, for the success of where Marion is today and where it's going to continue to go. And I'd also add kudos to yourself for the leadership that you bring to Medco, because you are the face of Medco and you're the driver. So we appreciate all your effort, Nick.
Okay, well, I also served on Metco many years ago on the board, and it is really amazing how far the organization has come, how it has become really a vital partner for the city. in economic development, and you all do just a great job. And we've talked a lot about the city being, like you use the word intentional, strategic, and being the driver of development rather than letting it happen to us. And I think you've taken that and put it into action, and it's really produced great results. And we're really grateful for the partnership that we have and the close working relationship.
Well, we thank you for your partnership, and again, this is we have strategy and we have ideas, but executing a lot of this takes a huge team effort. I mean, there's probably 10 people in this room that really contribute to the economic success of this community. So I think we've come a long ways. We're going to continue to improve our game, and it's an exciting time to be in this community.
And I think people come to the community, invest in the community, are willing to take risks in the community with big projects. I think because they see cooperation between all the various players, the Economic Development Corporation, the city, the Chamber of Commerce. They see professional leadership that gives them confidence to invest in the city. It takes a lot of different. It takes a lot of work to create that environment and perception that gives people confidence to come and invest here and want to put their business here. So, thank you for everything. Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So under the consent agenda items, the start items are under engineering. Is there anything on the remainder of the calendar that anybody wants to discuss? I know there are a lot of reappointments to boards and commissions. Those individuals want to be reappointed. The staff members who lead those have recommended the reappointments, so I've asked to have them put on the agenda. And we'll be doing interviews for also some new appointments coming up, but these are all reappointments on here. If there's nothing to be discussed before engineering calendar, we'll move on to the engineering section. Yes, go ahead.
I wrote it on the couch, so I don't remember where it fits, but I think it goes with number 2, the
Okay.
Department reports. Is that the receive and file? Is that where those are?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, okay. I had a question about the Chibo hearing because the outcome was supposed to happen tomorrow. Is there anything we could be updated with on that? I mean, yesterday, the 17th.
So it's my understanding that the appeal happened yesterday. I don't know that there's any decision that has been rendered. Kara was the one that handled the appeal. She did keep in touch with Ann and I during the appeal. All that I know for sure is that it has been submitted. I could Thursday give a better report on that.
Great.
They
thanks.
have a 30-day turnaround. Now it's been submitted, the hearing is over, and they have till I believe January 19th to submit their finding.
Right.
And in the meantime, they're able to proceed with no penalty per se because there hasn't been a ruling? Is that-
Correct, yeah, until final determination is made by the appeal, there will be no action taken.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, that's all I had.
Okay, engineering.
So we have several receive and file and referring to TAC. One thing I do want to bring up to council is as we get all these requests in, if there's particular items that you don't feel should go to TAC because that does take up staff time, then we need to amend those motions on Thursday. I believe there's 4 of them we referred to TAC last council meeting, and here's another 4 on this one. Those do start building up, and that does take staff time, and it's not just engineering. There's other departments that are a part of that. So I don't want to say that the citizens' requests aren't important, but you got to take in consideration the time that it takes to respond to each one of those and bring them back to you guys. So if you feel like it's a request that staff time should not be spent on, we need you to speak up for us. So the first one is a motion to receive and file a TAC request regarding Lions Lane. On this one, there was a couple pictures that were included with it, having a problem with getting semis out of the cul-de-sac down there at that end. I have requested that this petitioner get a petition from the other properties and businesses down there. What we've had before for no parking requests is one person requests no parking, and staff's recommendation is no parking, but then we get the rest of the neighborhood in here, and then it's voted down. So I'm having them do the legwork to make sure that everyone is in agreement, that, or at least the majority supports that. Any questions about that one?
Driven out there.
Nope.
All right, the next one is a motion to file and refer to TAC regarding roundabout signage. So this one's pretty short, but I probably would give them a call to talk to them about this one because all the roundabouts are signed the same way. So, again, this is one that maybe shouldn't be referred to TAC, but that's up to you guys.
Go ahead.
Is there a plan for future signage for the roundabouts? Is there stuff in the works as far as repainting or more painting or anything like that when the weather permits?
So I'll let Ryan speak to that as part of his annual painting program.
What do you mean, on each roundabout or which?
Yeah, in the roundabouts.
So twice a year we paint all the road markings throughout the city. Typically we start in April, May, depending on the temperatures, and then it will hit everything from May to September.
Is there anything new that's planned for the roundabouts as far as painting or signs or anything?
In terms of additional signage or additional painting,
Yes.
we haven't proposed anything new.
The latest thing that we did was we did paint the word yield on the,
Correct.
but
yeah.
we did that to all of them.
Right. And that was good.
Yeah. It was good. I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
But,
Other than that, there's no other proposals. At this point, we're even putting up signs that are considered optional in the manual and uniform traffic control devices. At some point, you get to the point where there's too many signs and you don't know what sign to look at.
Sure. My one thought off of the roundabouts would be some painting on the ground for, further down further away from saying this lane right turn only, or this lane kind of further away from the roundabouts to get some more paint on the ground for which way you're going to be going.
Like advanced legends in the lanes?
Yes, please. Yes. I don't know what that means. Advanced
so
legends, is that what you said?
Yeah,
Okay.
so those are called advanced legends.
Gotcha.
In the lanes. If you want to do something like that, that's something you'd want TAC to look at, whether or not that would
Sure.
be something we
I mean,
want to do.
That's the conversations I've had with people about the roundabouts that's been brought up to me is more paint on the ground about which way you're going to go depending on what lane you're in. So in my mind, this would go to TAC for something like that.
okay. I mean, I saw all these requests come in, and my personal view is that it should be reviewed. But I don't know if there's anybody else who feels any other way. And I know it takes staff time, but that's what we're here to do, is to serve the public and look at their requests.
So the next one is requesting a crossing light at 35th Street and McGowan Boulevard. And I know this one, I believe the mayor sent an email asking what the school's participation in this would be, and I guess that's up to you guys. We can press the school or we can not press the school. That's entirely up to you guys.
So wasn't their main issue really talking about at school time in the morning and afternoon?
So it's a pretty short one, so I'll just read it. It says, the traffic is very busy at McGowan and 35th Street in Marion, with many children needing to cross there twice a day. Would it be possible to get a crossing light?
that you can identify a lot of streets like that, and 35th Street does have a lot of traffic, but it's not constant traffic. I mean, I turn a block up from that all the time, so I'm at that intersection a lot, and it is a busy intersection. But boy, to have a traffic light there, I mean, there is a crossing guard there. At least I see them all the time in the afternoon.
Yeah, I don't think they're talking about like a traffic signal. What they're probably talking is like a rapid flashing beacon, is what I would have guessed there. There's not a lot of, that's all the only
But
details.
there is a crossing guard at that intersection?
Yeah.
That's my
That I
question.
don't know.
Is
Yeah.
If there's a guard there.
Yeah.
It seems to me that they're talking about school traffic, so, whatever, it should be coordinated with the school. If they already have a crossing guard,
Yeah.
then what's the issue?
So when you talk about a crossing light, Mike, what would you envision? What are the
I would
options?
envision like we put out on Albernette Road at Echo Hill, where it's the rapid flashing beacon light.
That would go on at certain times?
Yeah, you push the button and then it flashes.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay.
Like across 15th in front of
Yep.
Marion. Yeah. Is there? I assume there's cross paint on the ground for crossing there.
I
or
haven't
not?
looked at this at all yet.
I drive it all the time, and I can't tell you the
I
answer
know.
to
I
that,
drove
Will.
over it like twice today. I don't know.
I can't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are. Yeah.
So what are you looking for from us on that? You're going to,
Just if you have any questions on it.
any
and
other
if you
questions
want,
on that?
No.
All right.
And then number 5 was one that was sent to Renee regarding the, no, this is a different one. This one's painting curb on Lucor Road at the intersection of Indian Creek Road. So this one, again, I'd have to call them and find out if it's actually at the intersection, which will be improved as part of the project that hasn't been completed yet, or if they're talking farther west. I'm not sure where exactly they're talking, but.
Yeah, I drove that today, and I wasn't sure what they were talking about.
And just so council's aware, we tend not to paint physical curb just because it's hard to paint curb. So if anything, we would put a lane line outside of the curb. But
Okay, questions on that one?
if it's in the intersection that we're going to improve, it'll be fixed next year. So.
Okay. There's one more?
Yep, and then the other one is the one that was specifically to Renee that she asked to be received and filed, and this was regarding Annette's letter that she read to you guys at the last council meeting. And there'll be another one on Thursday that we'll receive and file that's regarding the light as well.
Okay, so is TAC will be looking at that one too?
Yep.
Any questions on that? Okay, so I assume at some point when we have a recommendation, we can have a discussion about that, or?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Barklow.
Your Honor.
Sir.
Under community development on the receive and file or refer to planning commission, it's not started. I wasn't planning to go through it. I just ask that you do take a look at that. Mr. Jensen was at the planning commission meeting. There were quite a few neighbors are involved in this project. Were notified. It went to planning and zoning commission for discussion, and it's a very unique and distinct project. There's a lot of different housing styles. Some of it's newer to Marion. It's got some alley-loaded units, so I just ask that you kind of read through that. If you have questions between now and the public hearing, please reach out to myself or Dave or Nicole in the office and ask those. It's a little different, a little more complicated request, so just so you're aware.
Okay. All right, moving on to the second part of the consent agenda, under engineering again. I will turn over the gavel to Mayor Pro Tem.
So the first one is a contract with Anderson Bogert Engineers and Surveying regarding the Marion Aircom Park Sanitary Sewer Extension for $19,520. This is basically the design of the wetland mitigation, the sanitary sewer, and then the wetlands that we have to rebuild then after we put the sanitary sewer in. And this is extending it basically on the southern end of Medco to the east end, and then the developer will take it from that point on. That's typical for any development, that you have to extend it to your boundary, and then they take it from that point on. So this is taking it to that point, and then they will continue it from there.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Next one is a contract with Anderson Bogert as well. This one is for airport consulting services. So as we do the zoning overlay, we'll have lots of questions from the public, I'm assuming, and we are not airport experts, and so this way we can use them as we need. If site plans get developed, things like that, we can have them come in and review it. There's a whole list of things in that Exhibit A that they would come in and help us support. The 3-year contract.
The price is the exact same as in number 2. Is that true?
Incorrect.
No, it's incorrect. It should be $29,280.
On which one, 2 or 3?
Under 3.
What was the number again?
$29,280.
Thank you. Anything else on that? Anyone? Okay, number 4.
So number 4 is approving a contract amendment for the runway. So this is the actual lighting for the runway, for the guidance system for when they land the planes. So this is mainly paying the subcontractor that works under Anderson Bogert to do that design, but now that we've selected the type of lighting, now they actually have to do the design for it. And because they didn't know what type of lighting system they would be designing, they didn't give us a price with the original scope.
And this, I remember we were looking at lighting estimates not that long ago, and the one that was recommended was like $300,000 and something. Is this any part of that, or is this an addition?
So this is
to
the
that?
design of that.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
No.
Okay. I relinquish the gavel back to the mayor.
All right, Chief Crable.
Good afternoon. With Mr. Knutsen's sharing that he gave our last city council meeting, I wanted to kind of take care of this issue for good. So I have some copies here of some photos.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
As you can see, at 3649 29th Avenue, this is one of the hydrants that Mr. Knutsen was concerned about. As you'll see, the hydrant was turned. The steamer fitting, which is this big right here, this is called a steamer fitting. As you can see, we can get our hoses right to it. By turning it, The back side of the hydrant where we have no connections is actually towards where the pole was. And if you look at the second page, I won't show that, but on the second page it shows some measurements. The hydrant is actually from the base to the pole approximately 2 feet 4 inches. But if you measure to actually the 2.5-inch fitting right here, it is 3 feet, which is what is in the code. So I see no problem with this hydrant, and I will get to another part of that in a minute. But I also wanted to show you the other hydrant he had concerns about at 2583 29th Avenue. That's your third page of photos there. That's kind of dark. This hydrant was also turned. It does not have a steamer fitting, which a steamer fitting is the big on the hydrant. This only has 2.5 connections. One's pointed out towards the 29th Avenue and one is pointed away from the pole, so we have no problems hooking to that hydrant. It's 2.5 feet from the pole. So in the code, Mr. Knutson was right. It says 3 feet. But it also says in the code, and that's on your first page that I gave you,
Yes.
Section 104.8, where there are practical difficulties involved in carrying out the provisions of the code, the fire code official shall have the authority to grant modifications for individual cases, provided that the fire code official shall first find that special individual reason makes the strict letter of this code impractical, and the modification is in compliance with the intent and purpose of this code, and that such modification does not lessen health, life, and fire safety requirements. So as you'll see, that's kind of where we're at. So we are within the code if you look at that part, because I see no life safety hazards with the way the hydrant is positioned. So our other options are to try to get Verizon to move the poles. That may take some legal action, which would be very costly to the city. Or we could move the hydrants. To move the hydrants is $9,000. But I do believe we are in the code if you look at 104.8. So it's up to the council how you want to proceed with this.
Question? Yes.
Clarification, Chief. You talked about that had to be, you said 36 inches?
Yes.
Okay, so not to be a stickler, but if I'm looking at page 2, to the middle of the tip of that is showing about 33 inches.
That's correct.
And the other one does show 36.
Yes, it does.
So is this kind of like horseshoes where it's close enough and it counts?
Well, actually, it doesn't matter that it's close enough, because the way it would affect health or life safety, according to the section I just read,
Okay.
we
Because
would
it's
not
not,
be able to reach those.
because you can access it.
Correct.
Okay.
So I can make modifications to the code,
So you're here
be documented.
saying with the way that is reading, it is your recommendation as the chief that they be accepted
Yes.
as they have been modified.
Yes, because reason makes the strict letter of this code impractical, and the modification is in compliance with the intent and purpose of this code. The intent and purpose of the code of 3 feet is so that we can hook hoses to it. We can hook hoses to it.
Okay.
And it's your opinion that the modification does not lessen health, life, and fire safety?
No, it does
Okay.
not.
Great.
I have a question.
But it
now.
is up to you if you want to have them removed or so.
Appreciate you looking at that.
Sure thing.
Yes, Mr. Sternad has a question.
I would, Chief, I just was kind of curious. So when they're pulling permits for those utilities to put the footings in for those grounds, where are we catching these? Is that in engineering? Is it with you? Is it with development? Where I want to make sure, I guess my opinion is going forward that we don't put any more light poles next to fire hydrants, period. I understand the language in this, but that power pole should not have been put there to begin with. So
Right.
When the plans were submitted, they said they were going to put it in the same place as a previous post.
correct.
That post had a certain circumference and diameter. They did not tell us that these posts were going to have this big a base. Therefore, we really didn't know until they were installed. Oh, you've got it this big on the bottom rather than the size of the previous pole. So now our red flags are up. I don't think it'll happen again when it goes through all the process that it needs to go through the planning.
Thank you.
But when they submitted their request, they didn't say what size pole it was going to be?
Not to my knowledge. It went through public service.
They did get typicals, but given the utility locations, if I could show you, there are so many utilities
Here, I can
right
show
in that area. You can't see them.
Right here.
That footing
Right there.
was placed
Yeah.
the furthest it could be placed away from that hydrant. Okay, without ripping up driveways, without ripping up fiber optics, water, gas line. And so they placed it as furthest as they could from that hydrant. And so I think the only one was within 3 inches of the opening, so.
And I did speak to some residents for the 2583. The resident at 2607 plans on widening his drive, and this will greatly hamper that if we do move that hydrant. He would not be able to do so.
Other questions for the chief? Okay.
We need action Thursday then?
Is there an action on this on Thursday? Or
As long as you give me
you're
direction.
not making a recommendation to do anything, so there's nothing for us to vote on?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Under Parks?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First item that I have on the agenda under Parks is a professional service agreement with Martin Gardner, and this is associated with the Lau Park Maintenance Facility addition. It's an item that we have in the CIP. The main reasoning for the addition to this facility is to be able to house our larger forestry equipment that we have within the department. So I'm just going to this is somewhat of a conceptual design for that facility. This is existing. This piece here is all existing. There are some dormers on the roof line that don't show up on that image. As I stated in my memo, we went through an RFP process to look for professional services for this project. We had responses from 3 companies, HBK. HBK was a company that we worked with on the Gill Park Splash Pad project, MSA, who is currently working with us on the Lau Park development project, and then Martin Gardner. Martin Gardner we've worked on with several projects within the park system. Lau Park concession facility, the Thomas Park facility, were all Martin Gardner projects that we've done in the past. After review of those RFPs, Martin Gardner was the highest scoring of those. They also came in with the lowest fee schedule for the project. With that said, the professional service agreement would be for design, construction documents, bidding assistant, project management, and then project closeout. Their fee schedule came in at $27,200, which is basically a little over 7% of the overall project total of $370,000. Usually we'll use an estimate for professional fees of around 10%, so we're well under that 10% for this project. We did review this at the Park Board level, and the Park Board is recommending approval of the professional service agreement with Martin Gardner Architecture. Excuse me. Any questions?
Where is it going to go?
It's going to go right, Renee. This is the existing maintenance building. This is the addition right here.
Okay.
For it. Well, basically, larger size doors on it. There's basically going to be a door on either end is what the plan is for that. We originally starting out at building addition of 60 foot wide, 100 foot long. Now, we might have to pull that back a little bit. We just have to look at when we get into issues with the square footage, sprinkling the facility, the building, and because we're putting vehicles in this section that are over 26,000 gross vehicle weight rating, if we go over 5,000 square foot, Chief, I think, then we need to sprinkle the facility. So those are all things that we're going to work through. There's, with attaching to the other building, there's some firewall things that we have to look at too, so.
And that won't expand into that gravel road, the access road?
It won't expand into the access road that's there now that kind of serves also as a trail connector for people to walk on. No, it will not get into that.
Great. Thanks.
Any other questions on that one? No? Okay. Second item that I had on the agenda under parks was the skate park project. And there's our rendering. This is actually the design that we ended up going with for the skate park. And what we have on the agenda is payment to Spawn Ranch, who was the company that was selected to design and then construct the skate park in Butterfield Park. Original budget for that project, we had it set at $150,000. Working with Spawn Ranch, we came up with an agreement of $140,000 for their part of that for the design and the construction. And then we had set aside the extra $10,000 of the overall budget that we would do several items in-house, the project, and those things in-house. We had some geotechnical work that needed to be done, so we hired a service to do that. The site staking, that we worked with the engineering department and Mike's staff to assist with that. And then the grading for the site sub-base work, and then we'll finish up under the department side of the project to do the seeding, landscaping, those type of things, which now, which everybody knows, this fall season for construction has been somewhat of a terrible fall season to be able to do this type of work with the cold temperatures, the wet conditions that we have. So we're actually going to keep the park closed until spring to finish up on the side of the work that we have to do. But Spawn Ranch, they were responsible for the construction of the ramps, all the flat work, concrete work. We will still come back in and put in a connector sidewalk in the spring. We have some, as I stated, we have some grading and things to do yet for the project. We're actually working out there today, but again, it's basically weather dictated at this time. Again, on the agenda is just that payment. It's a one and only payment to them of that $140,000, their commitment to the project. So
They're all completed with all.
they're all completed. Their work is all completed and done.
Good.
And we're seeing a lot of use out there, even though it's officially
Really?
not open. Yeah. I had a report on Saturday of a dozen kids out there and they're skating. So, yeah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Questions for Mike? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, on to community development.
First item on the agenda is the, actually 1 and 2 are actually related. It's just creating parcels from the Lacey property that the city did close on last week. So that's separating the right-of-way out we'll need for 6th Avenue and creating a parcel, essentially a plat survey for the property that's remaining. So it's not, you guys have a map, but it's really east of 22nd Street as it hits 5th. Old EIC property. It's the first house best. The city's already owned property. We're splitting the back half out for the 6th Avenue right away, and the front half to just be a plat survey. So that's items number 1 and 2. Item number 5, the next item, unless there were questions, is related to rental reimbursement associated with Randy Breeze. Randy Breeze was the tenant that lived above the vet clinic. This is how long this one goes back. He lived there for a very long period of time. His rent was very low, and he did meet the income guidelines to be at the 30% of median income for the county. So as we looked to acquire that property, we have a rent differential that we have to pay him to relocate him to a different facility since we bought it under the threat of condemnation. He was paying about, I believe it was about $155 a month rent. He had like a one-room above the vet clinic. So as he moved on and found additional place to live, which he submitted on, and this is his reimbursement for that. You can imagine trying to find a place that's comparable to that rent is just literally non-existent. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through that. There was the worksheet that our consultants that work with us on relocation provided Universal Field Services, so the amount would be $14,280 from rental assistance, and that's for 42 months of rental assistance, and that is we've had this. I believe we paid some rent. We did a housing differential payment on one of the homes we actually acquired. So we acquired a home at $68,000, and as Will can probably attest, you can't find like homes for $68,000 in the community. I think at that point we wrote a check for approximately $38,000. So that's what happens when we get into these areas and you're buying properties that have very low rental or home values, and you have to pay a rent or a home value or rental differential payment to bring them up to current housing that's similar and like to what they had before. So we haven't had a lot of these, but this is just one of them. So any questions on that?
Yes, Mr. Cernat.
Tom, on that, are we amortizing that over 42 months, or are we playing catch-up on that, and is it scheduled for 48? Can you refresh my memory what the agreement is for that when we make those, agree to those terms? Is that a 48-month?
I believe it's 42.
Okay.
42, and then I believe that we would like to do is a lump sum payment. That way it's just locked in. And we do check. We have to do, this isn't physically me, but our consultants do checks on the contract. We make sure that the contract that's submitted that is getting paid. We collect check receipts to ensure that the checks are being cashed and that we are that the individual is living there, paying rent. And so there is some verification on that, and you're just seeing the one worksheet that justifies that.
So you're making sure that it's being used for rent.
Well, all we can do is verify that they're
cashed.
paying rent.
This is
Yep, absolutely.
And this is all pursuant to a written agreement with them?
It's per Chapter 6B of the Iowa Code.
And that's where the 42
That's
months
correct.
is set?
Yep.
So there's no chance of them coming back later and having more claims?
No, this is the end of the. Yep, absolutely, and that's why we're here now. If you recall, we were paying rent assistance for RJ Construction for a year, based on him moving facilities and then renting some place to provide some of his property, and that was also in accordance with Chapter 6B of the Iowa Code. Certainly not an expert on this, and that's why we have Universal Field Services and the legal team that kind of watches over it too. So as we move forward with these, there's more than me looking at this for advice. So, any other questions on that?
Other questions? So is there more to be acquired for right-of-way? Is this?
Yes. So we have some small pieces off the back of this property, and this property. They're all about the same size. We don't need to acquire full properties. Over here, we've got a very large piece that includes a house that likely has a tenant in it. So this may be the case as well. And then an office building here at the corner of 21st Street and 6th Ave. we need a portion of that property, and then this also is a home that's owned by Mr. Inslee, who owns this property, and he does rent that as well. So we may be in that situation for 2 more properties from a rental perspective.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
The next item is the final plat memorandum of agreement for Tower Terrace Road Commercial First Edition. This is the YMCA final plat. I think you guys have seen this property. A part of this plat does include the deferral of the fees associated with it, and I believe that was till for a few months. Lon, do you remember what the end date on that?
Yeah, we were looking at August.
August. So there'd be a deferral of the fees until August, and so that'll be written into the memorandum of agreement associated with the final plat.
Scadella.
And that was about under $300,000, that deferral. Is that what the total was, like 240 or something?
191, I think, was
Oh,
one
even less.
piece, and then another piece was about 60.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions on that? All right.
Items number 7 and 8 are also related. And I think I've explained this to the council before. We've been kind of going back and forth with the city of Cedar Rapids, and then also some representatives, some legal counsel representing Collins Road Plaza Mall property. The city of Cedar Rapids, who is handling the construction of Collins Road, the city of Marion has a 28E agreement with them regarding handling the construction of that facility as it relates to the city of Marion. So there's a portion of the road that's in Marion, and Cedar Rapids is handling it. As a part of that, they did go through a right-of-way acquisition, which included a small sliver of property directly in front of, I know this doesn't show a whole lot, but it is a very small sliver of property. It's like right in front of Michael's, adjacent to Collins Road. The city of Cedar Rapids acquired it as a part of the project, but it's in the city of Marion. So they would like to deed us that property so that the city of Marion controls it. It's not in the ownership of city of Cedar Rapids. So we would just be accepting the deed for the property. It's a very small piece of property. The city of Cedar Rapids actually has to go through a process just like we do to dispose of the property. They'll be working through that. And then once they get through that process, we'll accept the deed and it'll all get recorded after all the appropriate procedures have been completed.
So it hasn't been approved by Cedar Rapids yet?
No, it has not.
We're going to vote on it before it's approved by them?
Yes, the city of Cedar Rapids asked us to proceed with this provision, understanding that they have to hold a public hearing, prepare the deed, and get it to us for review before it gets recorded. But if we were not willing to accept, they would not go through the process of doing the public hearing. So by approving through resolution, we wouldn't record anything until we've actually examined the deed and proceeded with examined the deed, and then they have proceeded to actually dispose of the property. That's why this has been on and off the agenda. It's kind of a chicken and the egg for the last few months.
So that sliver would end up being owned by the city of Marion?
Correct. Yep.
Does the city of Marion own anything adjacent to it?
Well, I believe we have easements over it, and that's a part of Collins Road, which I think we have.
So to the south there is
that's
actual
Collins Road.
Collins Road?
Yes.
It's road.
Right away.
To the south of it.
Mm-hmm.
And but is that owned by the city, that portion of the right-of-way? Or we're just going to own this little sliver in the middle of?
Do you know that, Mike?
Something contiguous.
I'll verify that, but
okay. I mean, I'm just curious how this is going to work.
Yeah. It's 0.04 acres.
Yeah,
It's small.
Yes.
But heavily traversed.
Absolutely. And it's not, the problem is it's not in the jurisdiction of the city of Cedar Rapids, but owned by the city of Cedar Rapids. At least this would be right-of-way in the city of Marion, owned by the city of Marion. if you understand what they're just trying to get.
So is there a road on that sliver? I mean, that's part of the road?
Yeah, Twittstown.
That's part of the road, but it's.
Well, I guess it's probably adjacent to Twittstown, Mike. I don't know if you can pull that up on the GIS, but I'll show you so you can see this little knockout here. That is literally right there, so. And this is the entrance so this is Twittstown Road. I believe Twittstown is ours. That would be directly adjacent to.
So this is
I can check to verify.
Significant little.
Yes, yeah. And a lot of this comes back to a conversation. It really stems from the sale of this property. The Collins Road property is being sold. When the City of Cedar Rapids went through a process to condemn 4 portions of this right-of-way, I believe this was a piece of it. They also condemned an easement through the property, and that's the whole traffic conversation that we had a few months ago, and we received some correspondence about what is going on. Well, that easement was acquired through condemnation. The attorneys representing the property, this was not something they were supportive of, clearly, because it went to condemnation. But when it all came down to finality, the easement that was assigned, you can see, is in the dashed line here. It went right through a row of parking. And there was nothing that they could do about that because it was assigned through the condemnation hearing. So I brought it to the council and said they wanted to realign that to the north and take it out of the parking stalls. So the red is what I brought to the council, I think back in September, to realign that easement so it actually goes through the parking lot without going through parking stalls. Come to find out, legal counsel was identifying that we could not make those changes to the easements because we didn't own the original easement. It was condemned through the City of Cedar Rapids and therefore owned by the City of Cedar Rapids. So the other action is to accept the public easement acquired through the condemnation proceeding and vacating the easement in black and approving the easement in red.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Tom,
I need more details on this one.
It's a lot of cleanup.
Believe me.
Keeps attorneys busy.
We don't have an application fee for this, so if there's a willingness to provide for one of those, that would be fantastic. This has taken a substantial amount of time to get through. The attorneys on the East Coast that represent the property owners, they feel horrible that they're in the situation, but when you acquire something when they're basically handed that, they have to straighten it out. I will say that there are buyers in the facility, and at one time there was a local buyer involved, so it wasn't just an out-of-state firm that was acquiring property. So I don't know if that's how it'll all roll out, but that helps in all of this.
Tom, will this warranty or this deed be by warranty as opposed to alternative deeds?
It's a quick claim deed.
We're looking at a quick claim deed and not a warranted deed.
Correct. Yep.
Is that in our interest?
We will be pushing that through for legal perspective and making sure that before we do anything that it's handled appropriately. So, okay. Yeah, I had a conversation with Ann Cruz this afternoon regarding it, and so the whole concept is that we would get it authorization to proceed, but we obviously wouldn't accept anything that wasn't correct. So.
We can compare to what it's worth.
Okay, other questions on these? Did we just talk about 7 and 8 together?
Yeah.
We did.
Okay.
I don't know if I have a question. I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
What Cedar Rapids did there is a complete mess. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to go in and clean up the mess that they just created by redoing that intersection right there and taking away the frontage road. And unfortunately, it's going to be us spending money on cleaning up. Just driving it the other day, no one knew what was going on, and all these cars are just coming and converging in one spot. And in the middle of the parking lot trying to get out of there is a disaster.
Ultimately, I'm hopeful that under new ownership, some of that will be recognized, that there's issues that need to be resolved internally, because those accidents, I mean, outside of the public easement, are going to be the responsibility of the owners, and I think that's where their attorneys are like, they're not they're not happy with what's happened, clearly, and I don't think the public that we're going to be hearing from is going to be happy with it either. But honestly, I don't know that there was anything that we could have done differently in the proceedings.
Okay.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
And if there was a less confusing way to present that, I would have really tried to do it. But believe me, that's been a confusing one.
Okay. On to city manager's section.
Yep, and following in Tom's trend, I think I'll try to discuss these two items together. These were tabled at the last city council meeting at the request of the applicant, but basically the first item was a carryover from the original request from the YMCA that the city consider providing a loan guarantee on the pledge loan for the project that they're working on to get the new facility to coming out of the ground. And since then, they've continued to have discussions with financial institutions about how to structure the financing to make the project move forward. The second one was a request that they had brought in at that meeting for the city to consider revising our request in lieu of providing a loan guarantee, to actually consider making another financial contribution to the project. In essence, taking our $6.5 million commitment up to $8 million. Since then, they've continued to work with the financial institutions. I've had some conversations with the bank about some ways that the city could help the overall cost of the project by simply changing the timing of our original commitment to get an idea on what that could bring to the project. And I think as they've continued to engage in those discussions, I think Bob has some ideas about how this might also change as well. So before I got too far into it, I wanted to see if the council would allow the Y to speak and have Bob come up and kind of explain where they're at with the project.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hello?
Hello.
Do I need to state my name for the record? You guys can see me coming by now,
Rachel?
right?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Bob Carlson, 1195 Seacrest Road, Marion.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time tonight. As Lon set this up and as Zach passes out some information, we actually asked to have this withdrawn last week, or was it 2 weeks? I lose track of time. But because we wanted to explore a few more options that might be more palatable maybe for the council, and as we move forward, maybe as a win-win, better for the Y and the city itself together. So we appreciate that and have had some conversation. What it's really done is it's given us an opportunity to speak also with Lon again probably more than a couple times, and then with Mike from the Parks Department, which has been incredibly helpful as we look down the road for some of the benefits that we see coming out of this for Marion residents as well. So if I can, I'd like to explain some of those tonight too. Lon has set this up really nicely, that we think that rather than asking for the additional $1.5 million in the loan guarantee, that we would ask the city council to consider to move the last $5.5 million up into the 2019 year, which would help us with about $500,000 or $600,000 savings in the carrying costs of the actual project as we talk to our financial institutions. It still leaves us about $1 million short with our financing package to get it done. So the additional request, instead of the loan guarantee and the $1.5 million, would be the city council would consider an additional contribution of $800,000 towards the project. The YMCA would then look to value engineer, do the things we need to do, some additional cash to to offset the additional probably $250,000 to get us to where we need to be, to get us in the ground this, well, it's winter time now, but this fall, basically. So that's the actual ask. And I know that when we last talked to you folks, and that's actually about half, just a little over half of what we asked for, we were going to ask for, I guess, in the last go-around. So that really gets us to that mark, to get us in the ground this year, to help our fundraising move forward, to do all the things we need to do, because people are going to be excited that they actually see this process underway. And in talking to some of you individually, or hearing and talking to others on the street, obviously that's a very big key, is people are holding out to make sure that this is actually going to happen. Unfortunately, I don't like that, but that's the reality of the project right now, because it's taken this amount of time to get to this stage. What I would like to also do is just to quickly go through some of the maybe concerns or some of the positive things that came out of talking to Mike and Lon the other day. And one of those was naming of the facility. I think that there's a certain facet of the population that thinks this is just going to be called the Marion YMCA. That's not necessarily what we're asking to have done. The name of this facility, I think, needs to be a joint discussion between the city and the YMCA, maybe the community at large, with asking the community what they think this should be called. This can be a recreation center of sorts, with both logos on the building, showing the support that we both have for one another to make it happen. So the Marion YMCA, unless I guess we joked around and somebody gave us a $3 million naming opportunity and said this has to be called the Marion YMCA, might be different. But at this stage of the game, with where we are, the naming of the facility is not the critical thing for us. I wanted to say that. We also talked about an agreement. I think it's high time we have an agreement between the city and the Y that spells out this process and where we're going with this. And in that agreement, we think that it's good to have an advisory board that oversees the operation of this. It's been done in other cities. We have agreements that we can go back to see how that works. And it would be something like 3 volunteers appointed by the city, 3 appointed by the YMCA, and then 1 collectively appointed with the city and the YMCA to have quarterly meetings / every other month meetings, and then have a representative from that group sit on the YMCA board as well, to have a full function view of how the whole process gets accomplished. And then the other thing that we're working through in the process of molding our programs together is the expense allocations that we need to do with the Parks Department and the Y, making sure that those all fit together, so that those salaries and expenses and everything go together, so that this operation takes care of all of that. One of the other very important things that I think I know I've always listened to, but maybe I haven't acted upon enough, is to give you kind of a background of what the benefits are to the Marion residents with this facility. And I hear that too, because I know you are all accountable to your constituency, and people are asking you questions about the city's contribution to this project, and you ought to have an answer to say, this is what we're getting back from this. As we talked about previously, we will provide unlimited guest passes for the facility. That means if someone comes in and does not want to buy a membership and wants to have a daily pass, they can come in as many times as they want to have that accomplished. That's not currently how the Y works. We have a 3 guest pass limit, and then you have to decide whether you want to buy a membership or not, because of the membership organization we are. Because of the city's commitment, kind of the public access, if you will, part, we feel that's important. As we work through our pricing for with Marion Parks and the Y, we found that especially our youth sports programs and those opportunities, our member fee and what you charge for your programs is very, very close to the same amount. So we would be eliminating our non-member rate for our programs through this facility, which are higher because you're not a member of the Y, and providing Marion residents unilaterally across the board full access to our programs for the member rate that the YMCA charges. Okay, so that's a good savings, what that is, it's about $20,000 a year if we put a price tag to it for what it costs for the difference between what a non-member and a member pays in our Marion program. Also, I think you know this, but I'm going to reiterate it. We do provide financial assistance to all of our program participants and members who can't afford the full service fee. So in other words, if you can't pay the full service fee, we're going to put you in a sliding fee scale based on your income to make sure you have access and pay a fee, but a smaller fee in order to be a member of the YMCA. So we would continue doing that. Right now, we do about $200,000 in scholarship assistance in our Marion location. We do $1.2 million metro-wide. And in our pro forma, we think that number Marion could grow to someplace between in 5 years out, somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 of financial assistance, just based on volumes of people that would be involved in the program. And of course, more members, you're going to get more of that. Okay. The other thing that we reached really hard to do and are looking at in our pro forma is to look at providing Marion resident only, facility only, to this facility memberships at a discounted rate. Okay, and what we've really looked at in our pro forma we think works is to provide a 10% per year for the first 5 years discount for members off the first year fee to be a member of the YMCA. So we've kind of stretched a little harder to give back a little bit more as we've asked for more, and that represents probably somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000 in those 5 years of, if you want to quantify that as a discount rate. So we're really stretching hard to try to work our pro forma. You know, obviously we have to operate this at the end of the day and make sure that it's financially feasible and successful. But we've listened to you, and we wanted to respond in a way that we felt was very positive. Some of the enhanced program offerings that we're looking at is, I know that the Marion, I think this is right, Mike. The adult, there's really not very much an adult recreation program. We do some of that because we have limited access to our gyms, but that will be greatly enhanced. Our adult and senior recreation, our fitness and water aerobic classes, of course. We want to expand into a volleyball for youth program, which we do a little bit of, but we'll have gym space to do it now. All of this is just larger shared programs that we're able to do collectively with Marion, the Parks and Rec, and the Y. I'm just naming a few of these. Pickleball, indoor pickleball, it's huge. We'll do a lot of that. And then a lot more, as we've talked about, family activities for families, kids, moms and dads together. Increased usage of Gill and Loud parks, obviously, because we're right in the middle of all of those. And then bingo. Bingo was a big one because you got to turn people away when they come in for bingo. And we'll have 3 gyms. We won't turn anybody away anymore. So just to put a few of those things into perspective, which I think is huge program enhancements that we're really trying to reach out. I know we're asking the city to work with us and asking for a lot, and so we're trying to do whatever we can to impress upon the folks of this community that Marion is extremely important to us, and we have to give back as much as we can. I've talked a lot, so I brought some colleagues with me here in case when you ask me questions, I look like deer in the headlights, and I'll do the best I can. So,
thank you.
Questions?
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Sternad.
I have a couple, Bob. Thanks for coming back tonight. Can you just clarify the 10% discount that you're considering for the Marion residents? Would that be the first 5 years of membership, or is that for the first 5 years of the new facility?
We were thinking the first 5 years of the facility, but we would entertain the thought of, if someone came in year 2, we would entertain the thought of giving them a 5-year commitment.
Perfect. Thanks
we
for
just need
clarity.
to try to figure out a way to do that. It's probably going to be a nightmare to control, but we'll figure it out somehow.
Sure. No, just a clarification. Thank you. The second question I have here is, you made reference to the financial assistance. Can you just, for those of us that are not familiar with the financing of the YMCA, do you receive any state or federal funding that helps offset those financial assistance that are awarded to the members, or is that something that's strictly depending on local donations and contributions on the Y's behalf solely?
Yes, correct, the last one. We do a fundraiser in each community. Those dollars stay within the community. It's called our scholarship assistance program, and we raise dollars to offset the cost of that. Unfortunately, we can't raise that kind of dollars, so we operationally subsidize the rest of those because there's just not a lot of state funding out there that'll work with us on the operational part of it.
Okay. And just for education purposes, are there any state or federal programs that do provide any through Department of Human Services or through the Hawkeye programs? Are there programs out there? Can you just educate me as to whether there is or isn't any of those out there available?
We work with DHS in our child care program, so we funnel some of our child care kids through DHS before then we have to look at subsidizing them with our own scholarship program. And then with our Hawkeye food program, we utilize all those that we possibly can in those programs. And usually it's child care and food is where we get any state funding that we get.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Other questions?
I just have one thing. Thank you for this detail, and again for coming back tonight and being creative, because I specifically wanted to see something like number 1 where there was like a joint, how are we going to partner together if our Parks and Rec was going to benefit from this and the city was giving such a contribution. So I feel like this is a good start. I don't know if this is the solution, but it's something that I don't think was there before that was needed, so I'm glad to see it. And I appreciate all of the ways that you're trying to incorporate users and offer discounts for Marion residents because of the commitment. I'm just concerned if it's named the Marion Rec Center, like, are we being too exclusive with all this? And then are we going to make money with all of the discounts we're offering to our own people? Are we going to have people from outside coming in that does subsidize all of the discounts and memberships that can't be afforded that we want to make sure we give to people? So when you play that out and you look at possible membership coming in and offering all of this, does it still work with the financial plan of paying back loans and making money and paying staff?
Yes, and that is really a good question because our pro forma had a little bit of latitude in it, but not a lot. Obviously, we're a nonprofit, and looking to make sure that we have the financing package done the best way we can and raising more money in the process. All of that helps buy down some of this that we're trying to accomplish. So honestly, it's a little bit of a scary venture when you sit down and talk about giving discounts back because, you don't want operationally to be putting something on the planet that's not going to pay for itself, okay? But I think we have a good enough, I think we have room within that we can, and really I think we've been conservative on our volume that we're going to see with influx of members into this. So I think most of this would be made up in kind of a volume way because of what we've seen in other communities like our size that have put facilities like this up. So it's always a risk, Renee. I appreciate your view, and we just feel like Marion has done so much to get this going that we need to, as we kick into the rest of this Marion Capital campaign and the rest of the community-wide campaign, that this might be some really goodwill to hopefully get people on board on the contribution end of things too. And not only just in the capital contribution side, but to help us sustain it from a contribution standpoint for those scholarship dollars going on and on into the future.
What happens if you don't break ground this fall, as you call it, or this winter?
Well, we don't know exactly what the number is, but it's north of $1 million with excess costs based on just with cost and the inflation of costs and with what we don't know about steel tariffs and those kind of things. So we're told that it's north of $1 million, but we don't exactly know what it is. And it's just the lack of momentum to really get to the end of this campaign, to get it over with and to move on and to finally get this in the ground. I know we all have the same view about that. We want to get this thing started and we want to get it built and we want to get people in it. And, you know, this is a pathway that we see to make it happen.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, Mr.
Somebody
Jensen,
else
go ahead.
I'd say to answer some of Renee's question, from a building standpoint, if you talk about a lot of that cost adds up if nothing starts until later spring of 2019. But the objective is to get an agreement with the city to get the bank financing in place as soon as possible. And as soon as all those are in place, or at least we even have an MOU with the bank, then we've been working with our contractor. We start getting the subcontractors lined up. Then once we have all this in place, those subcontractors can start ordering those long lead items that they've been sitting on. And so they've kind of got them quoted, and as soon as we can get them busted loose and ordering a lot of those items, then a lot of that extra cost will not be incurred on hopefully quite a bit of those items. So the sooner we can get it, we may not actually be pouring concrete out there and all of that, but we can get a lot of the subcontractors moving ahead, especially on some of the long lead items that are some very, very high dollar items. So that will offset or alleviate a lot of that cost from being incurred.
Go ahead.
So if this is successful in one of the three options, it sounds like we may be presented on Thursday. When do you anticipate phase one to be ready to go? Doors open?
Friday. We're actually meeting with our board tomorrow.
No, I mean for patrons. Like when, you know,
completed.
Completed.
Phase one completed. Sorry.
Well, it would be completed at the same time because we'd roll into phase two with the pool. We'd do it all next year, so it'd be the end of the year, end of 2019, first part of 2020.
Doors open.
Doors
to patrons. And then just this as an aside, Mike, when is Tower Terrace going in with the flip of the Fed money 2020? I feel like that opening of Tower Terrace is.
You're talking about Seed Albernet?
Yeah.
Yes.
That leg.
So that I have a meeting with the consultant later this week, but acquisitions will start soon.
So
that project.
When's it slated to be constructed? I think is what she's saying.
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're bidding it next. I don't have it in front of me, but
No.
I can get that information.
Okay, because I feel like it moved up a year because of the swap
It
thing
did.
we did, and so that's in sync. Okay, I was just trying to figure that out. Thank you.
It wouldn't affect the Y project because it would be that roundabout would stay as it is, so it won't impact their.
No, I just mean from like bringing in patrons from Northeast Cedar Rapids and all of that.
Having it be accessible.
Yeah.
Like
So
Tower
that
Terrace when
time
it opens is what she's asking, I think.
And will you talk to folks about what they would like to see this called? I'm asking you. I'm asking everyone. I know we've done things in Marion where we've asked the citizens to send in. What do you think this ought to be called or whatever? I'd like to see what the community thinks. I really would.
Yeah. Well,
You're a great catalyst for that.
For me, that's a big positive. I think the naming, for the size of the investment, I think that would be a big positive with residents of Marion. Are you familiar with communities that have owned and operated their own rec center? I mean, are you familiar with some?
Yeah, like the city.
City-owned
Yes.
facilities.
Correct. Yes.
You are okay. So, how do their membership fees work in comparison to what your membership fees are? I mean, if the city if we had our own, are you familiar with some examples of?
Well, like if you talk about like the North Liberty Rec Center, that's one that comes to mind because it's very close. A lot of those are very heavily subsidized by the city and property taxes, even to operate them. So that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to get the capital contribution from the city, and then we want to operate it with membership dollars and our earned income. So a lot of those, as a matter of fact, why cities come to WISE a lot of times to ask them to operate them is because we have a built-in hierarchy to do it, we can do it cost effectively, and the city doesn't have to keep putting so much money into it operationally every year. So, I mean, that's what I've...
But they still charge a fee,
They
correct?
still charge a fee, but typically it's sometimes a lower fee because the city subsidizes it.
Because it's being subsidized
by
in
the city.
another way. Okay.
Right, by the taxpayers.
All right. So you can't really compare.
It's hard to compare.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of city-wide rec programs that come together. As a matter of fact, I'm researching some of those because of the agreement I talk about that I think we need in order to make sure that we've got it ready to go forward.
Can I ask one
Yes, go ahead.
You asked something that made me think. So if I were a patron and you were open, your facility's open, and I'm a Marion resident, I'm going to see a charge for Marion resident membership and a non-Marion resident membership, correct?
Yeah, it would be
Okay.
and basically what we're looking at is we know that about of our membership in Marion, about 75%, 80%, it's hard to tell but we do track it, utilize the Marion facility almost exclusively, and then the rest of them, 25 or 30%, use other facilities. So we started thinking about that and saying, if this is really going to attract Marion residents to this facility, why not look at adding an opportunity for them to have a facility-only membership, and then that's where the discount comes. Comes off the full price, but it's a discount for that facility only.
Okay, so with that discounted rate, they wouldn't be able to use the other facilities. It would be specifically for
Marion-only
using the
facility.
Marion facility.
Oh, right.
Yep.
And there'll
Okay,
be,
that makes sense.
and we think there's a pretty high percentage that will take advantage of that.
Yes.
First
Mr.
off, I
Grant.
want to thank you for this sheet that you brought us. That
Yes,
I
sir.
was looking for more, or to see what the benefits for the residents would be, and looking for more than just a guest pass, unlimited guest passes. My question is, how much is an unlimited guest, or how much is a day pass?
For a youth, it's $5, and for an adult, it's 12. Help me. 12.
Okay. One
Did you say
thing
families 20? Families 20?
Yes.
for a day, a family. Okay. The benefits, what I had in my mind, this actually goes a little above and beyond. I would like to see, since it is a partnership between the city and that's why the way I see it as a partnership between the city and the Y, not a Y facility. So I'm happy to
I
hear
agree.
that you're on
We
that
totally
same
agree
page.
on that.
I would like to see more representation from Marion on the Y board. I don't know how many people you have on the board. You're saying one here on the Y board, but I'd
More.
add another one.
You mean more from that group sitting on the Y board?
Two, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
ab-
what
ab-
do you have a 7 board, 10 board? I mean, how many are on your board?
We have, generally when we're a full board, it's usually 22 or so.
Oh, it's pretty big. Okay.
Yeah. But that's,
I would like to
That's
see more
open for-
representation
That's a
from
lot
the
of
city.
sheep to
But
her.
that board is
Yeah.
different than this, what he's talking about here.
Right. But I'm saying
YMCA board.
I would like to see more representation from the Marion Advisory Committee on their board.
On the main Y board.
Correct. Then one, which it says here.
that's fine. I was just
and-
looking in that model to have somebody that was going to bring
Where does it say that?
bring it from the group to our board, but if it's more than one, that's not a problem.
Sure. And I guess I'm still confused on what exactly you're asking for as far as money. And hopefully Thursday we get a nice in-depth presentation about everything, and if there is this upfront 5.5 that you're asking for, how that affects the taxpayer, the RCI, the levies, everything. Hopefully that will be all explained in depth on Thursday, because I'm still confused on.
Now that I know what
Exactly
the
what.
now that I know what the concrete ask is, I can run those numbers.
Excellent.
Okay.
I think that's all I got.
Yes, Mr. Bartolo.
I did look up the schedule for Tower Terrace for Seat Albernet. The bid letting is proposed for November of 2019. Working days haven't been established on that. I don't know if it's a multi-year project or not until we get the final plans done. But it's November of 19 for the bid letting.
Okay.
2020.
2020.
Start till 2020.
Okay. Still syncs up.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Carlson?
Paul,
Paul, do you have any questions?
is he there?
Hold on.
And it's a question for Lon. Are we talking lost money? Are we talking hotel motex money? Are we giving something up because we're giving money? I have nothing against YMCA, but are we looking at the CIP and thinking, all right, what can we cut out of here because we need this money? And Lon, you're pretty talented at coming up with a few dollars at the end of the year, but you can't come up with $1.5 million. That's my only question.
So I think his question is the additional contribution, which is, I think we're hearing today is the request is 800,000. Where is that going to come from?
Yeah, that's what I'll have to take a look at. The pledge to the YMCA was actually a combination of anticipated bond dollars and local option sales tax dollars. When the local option sales tax was extended, we allocated $2 million of that towards the YMCA, and then the other 4.5, which was actually the city's original pledge, was intended to come from a series of 3 separate bond issues at $1.5 million. So what I'll have to do is run the numbers. The local option sales tax, unless we start to really run ahead of where we were planning our projections, is pretty well programmed out through the end of 2024, so it would have to be added into the bond dollars. But I can run the numbers and see where it comes out for the YMCA. The original 1.5 was in the CIP, so you're not, in that sense, it's not in there competing with other dollars, so it's just where would the other 800,000 come from.
Okay, does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, it does for now. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get more information on Thursday, it sounds like.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
So are we going to just get the information at the Thursday meeting when we're asked to make this decision? I mean, I know time is of the essence, but it's a big decision, and I would like more than 20 minutes to make it, just like on the spot with seeing everything presented. And I realize that, you said you got to dig into the numbers, but can we possibly get it emailed, or I don't know how it works, but I just don't want to walk in and get major information, have to make a big decision on something I've not seen a half an hour before.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask the council to make a decision on $800,000 with 20 minutes to review the financial impact. So we'll jump on it right away in the morning. And just looking at my schedule for tomorrow, I've got a meeting in the middle of the morning. But if nothing else jumps on there, we could probably have some information out to the council maybe by 1 o'clock.
Great. Thanks.
Other questions for Mr. Carlson? Okay. Thank you very much for coming back and
Thank you all very much.
additional information. Yeah. Thanks, Dale, to everybody. Okay. Guess that was it for the items to be discussed. Anything else that anyone would like to discuss? That's on the agenda.
Hey, Mayor, we
Yes, sir.
forgot to put it on there, but we have to swear in Officer Wimpin before he goes to the academy in January, and I think Rachel's going to add it on there.
So we'll have a swearing in on Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the correct date for the Chivo I checked was January 17th, not the 19th.
Okay. And former Councilwoman Kim Etzel will be here on Thursday also. Okay. If there's nothing else, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.